Chapter 2. Ruby Garcia. Gemma Granger was not happy with her father, and she made it pretty obvious. Granger watched unhappily as his 8-year-old daughter marched, back straight and stiff, into her grandparents' backyard. He had to promise 1 trip to the zoo, 2 to the exploratorium, and a new Barbie doll before she would begin to forgive him for working on a Sunday. Spoiled, he knew, but ever since the divorce, he had found it impossible to say no to her.
"You never spent time with me,"
Gemma had complained when he returned from his early morning meeting with the DA. "That's not true, Pumpkin," Granger said. "It's the bad guys, Gemma. I keep telling them not to get caught on weekends, but they just won't listen to me." Gemma tried to keep her glower, but the smile poked through anyway, tilting all her freckles upwards. Her forgiveness hadn't lasted very long, though, and now she let the garden gate slam closed behind her. Granger sighed, putting the vintage Mustang convertible in gear and pulling away from his parents' house in the Richmond district. He wondered if Marion, his ex, had the same problem saying no to Gemma. Somehow he doubted it. Marion always seemed in control of everything, all the time. Control, though, was something Granger was finding to be a scarce commodity these days. And this case, he thought, was simply another example. Wong wanted things kept simple, quick, and quiet, but he had already heard reports of Zach Barnes' death on the car radio and speculation about murderer and motive. Quiet was already impossible, and he suspected that, given the cast of characters, quick and simple would be equally elusive. The case had politics written all over it.
Good evening. A startling slaying is sending shockwaves through San Francisco tonight. Popular art gallery owner Zachary Barnes was found shot dead at his workspace. The man being charged with his murder is Barnes' partner and renowned artist James Tobin. Our own Frank Somerville is live at the crime scene.
Laura, details are still sketchy, but police tell me that Barnes was found shot in his gallery right behind me around 9:30 yesterday. Police are saying they answered a 911 call from Yvonne Barnes, the victim's wife. When they arrived at the scene, there were signs of a desperate struggle. Barnes was already dead, and artist James Tobin was lying near Barnes' body, injured. After some initial questioning, Tobin was then taken to General for treatment, where he's listed now in good condition.
Frank, why is this case eliciting so much interest?
Well, actually, several reasons, Laura. Barnes and Tobin were long-term friends and business partners. They were also prominent in San Francisco's art and cultural circles. The tragedy of this case really cannot be overestimated. These people represented the best of San Francisco, and no matter the outcome of the investigation and the possible trial, the people of this town are the true losers.
Frank, how well known as an artist is James Tobin?
His paintings hang in many prominent San Francisco homes, and they sell in the high 5 figures. This is going to be a battle royal. Already, rumors of runaway greed and a lurid sexual triangle will make this trial the hottest ticket in town.
Thank you, Frank, for that in-depth report. Stay tuned.
He cut through Golden Gate Park, in no rush to reach his office at the Hall of Justice. Looper would still be hard at work. He had no desire to barge in on her initial interviews and too much respect for her professionalism to even think of intruding. The park was lovely, decked in the flowers of early summer, although a few stubborn rhododendrons and azaleas still flaunted surreal, pastel blooms amid the dark trees. Bicyclists, picnickers, stylishly ragged teenagers on rollerblades, grandparents in wheelchairs, grandchildren in strollers, and over them all the unexpected pleasure of a warm San Francisco morning. Granger frowned on it. He refused to think about the case already. Not enough evidence, no real knowledge of the facts. Thinking about it at this stage could only prove frustrating at best. At worst, it could create presumptions, which in turn would create blind alleys, wasters of time and effort. No, he would get back to the office and start on the background, get the basics organized, and try not to think about how Wong had given him a case that promised to reek of publicity and politics. The two things that he, of all the people on her staff, disliked the most. That she had given him the case deliberately was not open to question. It made sense. She would step in and take credit for a good outcome and leave him alone to take the blame for a bad one. He knew that some people considered him to be the best prosecutor in the DA's office, but it seemed that being a good prosecutor these days wasn't enough. And Granger, who hated court TV and all that it implied, knew without a doubt that Wong considered him a liability. It wasn't just a murderer whose fate depended on this case. Granger knew that his career, too, was on the line. Ruby Garcia couldn't keep herself still. She couldn't sit, she couldn't stand, so she paced relentlessly around the gallery's reception area, where the lady cop had asked her to wait. Past the cool leather sofa, all planes and angles, past the glass coffee table with its two artfully arranged magazines, past the metal kinetic sculpture that rose from the floor in the corner and tinkled at her whenever she passed, and back again, sculpture, coffee table, sofa, metal, glass, leather, and none of it warm. Words, of course, but the sound coming from Zach's office. Yvonne's eerie monotone and the cop's short grumbles. Then every once in a while, Yvonne's voice grew louder, still controlled, like always, but lilting, sounding like the professional broadcaster she'd once been. The television voice that delivered the grimmest news in the same tone as sunny weather. She wondered what Yvonne was saying now. This was all too strange. Ruby trembled, clutching at her gut as she paced back and forth. She couldn't believe, not really, that Zach could be dead, all crumpled up and lying in a circus of blood and glass on the gallery floor. She wished she could get upstairs to their apartment, fix herself some coffee, or a stiff belt of something. Jimmy's apartment, that is. He had always made that clear. Not her place, just Jimmy's, even if he did let her live there. But Zach had told her that it wasn't Jimmy's place either. Not really. Not the way Jimmy made it sound. Zach owned the whole building, and he had let Jimmy stay in the apartment ever since Jimmy's divorce. But Jimmy didn't own any of it, even if he made it sound that way. Not that it mattered, not now. Not with Zach lying out there and Jimmy shot. She'd gotten over being mad at Jimmy for not letting her go to Los Angeles with him. It was a publicity deal, he said. Boring as hell. Society snobs, no place she wanted to waste her time. She should stay home and work on her own paintings, develop herself as an artist. But she knew the real reason Jimmy wanted her to stay behind. Some woman or other down in LA. A gallery type, maybe floppy hat, sunglasses, print skirt, and a long scarf. Ruby and Jimmy had been together only a year. His divorce was barely final, and already he was skipping around on her. But thinking of Jimmy's trip made her think of other things, and she pushed the whole subject away and paced again, rubbing at the knot in her stomach with her fists. Zach had been good to her, better than he'd had to be, better than Jimmy had ever been, even if Zach was an art dealer.
Ruby Garcia?
Ruby turned suddenly. The cop had walked in quietly and stood in the open doorway.
Yes?
Ruby said. Her stomach knotted more tightly.
My name is Inspector Looper. Homicide.
The cop paused a moment, looking Ruby up and down.
Are you alright? Yeah, I guess so.
It was hard for her to breathe.
I'm just shook up. Why don't you sit down? Sure.
Ruby sat down, and Looper sat down too, and they stared at each other intently. Ruby didn't like this game, but she didn't know any way not to play it. She could think of nothing to say because every thought in the world had left her head except the image of Zach all bloody on the gallery floor. The cop took out a notebook and put one of those little tape recorders on the table between them.
Age? Age? Yes. How old are you? I'm starting with the easy ones first.
The cop smiled a little bit. Ruby didn't know what to think of her. Looper was maybe 40. She had fiery red hair and thick features, a face like somebody from the old neighborhood. Only no one from her old neighborhood had ever been a cop.
I'm 23. And what was your relationship here? I'm Jimmy's girlfriend. We live upstairs, in the loft apartment. Did you witness the shooting? No.
Ruby paused. The cop just looked at her, waiting.
When I came into the gallery, Zach was lying on the floor. With Yvonne over him, he was already dead, I guess. And Jimmy was shot too. Did you see Zach earlier today, before the shooting? Yeah, he came over this morning, him and Yvonne. Social call? Not really. He and Jimmy were going to talk business, and Yvonne and I were supposed to go to this arts commission thing down in the Mission District, a mural project for the Bernal Street dwellings. It was planned months ago. But we get out there and it turns out the whole thing's been canceled just a week ago.
Looper wrote in her notebook.
How long did you expect to be there?
She said.
All day. So you came back early?
Ruby hesitated.
Yeah, that's right. Yvonne was still with you when you came back? Yeah. I dropped her off out by the alley entrance. She was in a rush to see if Zach was still around, and I had to go park the car. About how long was that?
Looper asked.
I mean, between when you dropped her off and when you got here yourself.
Ruby shrugged.
Hey, you know what it's like, parking around here. I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15. There's a place we park around the block. But it was taken, so I had to go a block over. You know, San Francisco, you're never gonna find a place to park.
The cop smiled a little bit, and Ruby felt herself loosening up.
So then?
The cop said.
I walked down Minna Street, then up the, you know, that little walk up the side there. We always go in that way because that's where the workspace is, and the stairs to the loft. Anyway, I saw the gallery door was open, and I thought that was funny. It wasn't the kind of thing Yvonne did, leaving doors open behind her. Then I saw her purse on the ground. Coins, money, lipstick, all this stuff scattered all over the alley, and I ran inside. When you were outside, did you hear a gunshot? No. Are you sure? Yes. When I got inside, I heard Yvonne though. She was in the main gallery, leaning over Zach, trying to bring him back to life, giving him CPR. There was blood on her hands and on her blouse.
Ruby started to shake.
Then I saw Jimmy. He was bleeding, and I ran to him. What did he say to you? He said he was hurt, that I should call 911. Anything else? No, not really. Are you sure?
Ruby put her head down and the shaking got worse. Against her will, she said,
He said Zach tried to kill him.
She caught her breath, hard against the sobs. Looper handed her a tissue and waited until Ruby conquered the sobs.
How long have you known James Tobin? About a year. I'm a student down at the Art Institute, and we met last spring, one night after this guest lecture he did. I moved in here about a month later.
But he had already broken up with his wife, if that's what you're thinking.
You know, you are a real case.
You know, you're lucky I'm even talking
I'm lucky? Listen, lady,
Your friend was murdered this morning, and I'm trying to figure out what happened, and you are acting like a like a girl dog. They won't let you say bitch. Oh, my daughter made me promise to stop cussing. Strict, huh? Oh, she's a tyrant.
Ruby stiffened. Something in Looper's tone reminded her of Aunt Imelda, prophesizing eternal damnation because Ruby was living in sin. Ruby's lips tightened.
I'm on a scholarship,
She said defiantly.
I'm from the barrio. Jimmy let me stay here free. My folks don't have a lot of money. Does Tobin? What does that mean? Were there financial problems at the gallery? Does everything come down to money? There's a man lying dead in the next room. I know, that's why I'm here.
Looper stared at Ruby until the girl lowered her eyes.
After Jimmy asked you, did you dial 911? No. Why not? Because Yvonne went out of her skull.
Ruby said angrily.
She started kicking Jimmy, and when I tried to stop her, she came at me. Why? She was upset, I guess. And she was still mad at me for what had happened.
She looked at Looper and wondered if Yvonne had told the cop about her and Zach. Ruby felt herself begin to smile. She couldn't help herself. She felt proud, even a little smug, that Zach had wanted her. For a minute anyway, she outclassed Yvonne, and that pride overpowered her shame, even now that he was dead.
You know, between me and Zach, she was pretty jealous about that. So you were sleeping with both men? Yeah,
Ruby said, and she said it with finality, as though this was the tiny bit of information she had been rushing toward all along, only just now realizing it. Then she felt the shame worse than ever as the cop bent her head, expressionless, making a quick little jot in her book.